Welcome back, everyone, for another episode of the True Northing podcast with Allison and Kristen. Today, we're going to talk about being on a blaming journey versus a healing journey, sort of the way we can approach life and look at life. So, someone who is on more of a blaming journey in life is someone who experiences life or challenges happening to them as something out of their control. And when there is stress or challenge, this person often reflexively looks outward, looks to the external world, looks to other people in their life to determine what or who is to blame for their current life circumstance. And that's how they tend to view conflict or challenge in life. Something's happening to me that I don't like, or that I didn't ask for, or that's uncomfortable. And this isn't fair. And I need to assign blame somewhere in order to explain why this is happening to me. Someone who is on the opposite side of the spectrum and who approaches life as more of a healing journey is looking at challenges and conflict with the perspective of personal responsibility. This is someone who, in the face of stress or challenge, asks themselves, why is this here? How did I perfectly attract this situation? What is here for me? Why is this showing up for me, for my benefit, for my growth, for my healing? And so there's this personal responsibility piece that challenge equals growth or healing opportunity. And it's my job to be curious and take a good look at what is happening and why it's so uncomfortable or hard for me, and identify what's in it for me. If I can really meet this challenge, meet this situation, what's in it for me? How might I ultimately benefit on the other side of this situation? What might it be guiding me to? What might the invitation be for me? How am I being invited to meet the situation, to show up, to face a wound I've been carrying for a long time that maybe I'm ready to release or move through? So they're drastically different perspectives and approaches to hardship. And I'm sure anyone listening can find themselves in that spectrum, maybe identify with one or the other or somewhere in the middle, depending on the situation. And also identify the people in their lives and where they fall.
It can be like a reflex, right? The blaming of somebody else when the challenge occurs or the hardship occurs. It's so instant. It can be so instant for people to look around and be like, oh, whose fault? Who did it? Operating from that. Oh, is it my fault? Is it your fault? That kind of mindset. And those really are two different responses. Like, is their fault? Is it somebody else's fault? Is it my fault? Almost like the hot potato of blame. Or is it about getting curious of what's happening? And that's it, the perspective. What is here for me to learn? How is this perfectly arising in my life for me to see something possibly unseen, learn something new about myself, learn something new about the world, maybe even get to see how I usually respond And it's fascinating because it is situation to situation. Some situations might be really easy to self reflect. And with some people in some relationships, it might be really easy to self reflect. And in others comes the hot potato of blame. Generally, this happens in our closest relationships, whether it's with parents, spouses, um, maybe even your boss. And it can show up in sneaky ways. So even if we're really good at it in certain areas, perhaps with our boss, maybe with our spouse is harder, and it brings up something else. And so it is a unique opportunity to see where do I respond? Am I doing a hot potato of blame, or is it an opportunity that I'm taking to learn something about myself in the world?
The hot potato, I love that analogy. There seems to be a payoff to be able to assign blame,
Hmm.
sort of like the mind's way of organizing chaos.
Mm.
And it helps us to feel safe
Mm.
because sorry, if we can assign blame and there's a very clear reason, tangible reason, then it reduces the feeling of chaos, maybe about the unknown, and allows us to feel like we can organize ourselves around that understanding. I think about when a tragedy happens, with a child, and people want to know why that happened. How could this happen? Who's responsible? What was it that happened with the parent? Where was the parent? What did they do? How did they maybe neglect a need, or fail to take an action to protect against this tragedy? And that is a default for a lot of us. So again, it feels like this way that we can make sense of things in order to feel like we are protected against that thing or something like that happening to us. But I guess I want to come back to this lack of, or hmm, avoidance of responsibility. When we automatically look for that order and we want to assign blame externally for something we're experiencing, then we're not responsible. We don't have to be responsible. There's nothing for us to do other than be a victim to the situation.
Yeah. And it's so easy to do because we are in situations that somebody's wronged us. It doesn't take away. I guess what I want to say is taking responsibility doesn't take away from the thing that happened. The thing that happened could be wrong. It could be uncomfortable. It could be so many things. But there's the opportunity to self reflect and to see where is my participation in this? How is it affecting me? What am I learning about myself? Um, because it's not like we're going to go through life without things happening to to us or for us or within our life. I mean, maybe the boss is mean. Maybe the boss is saying hurtful things. Maybe the spouse is, you know, neglectful or whatever it is. But the invitation is like, what in me is this bringing up right now? Where have I seen this before in my life? How do I respond? Where do I feel disempowered? Oh, I can't, there's nothing I can do about it. It's just the way that it is or the way that they are. Versus how am I participating in this relationship? Where do I feel a victim to what's happening? And realizing our place as much as we can within situation or the dynamic. There's more to it. There's something else that's there that I want to touch on, but I want to see what else you have, which I'm not sure what it is yet. I'm like, there's something else that's brewing here, um, but it's not quite there yet for me.
Yeah, I think the attachment to being the victim in a situation,
Hmm.
somehow there's a payoff.
Mm.
If
Well,
I
yeah.
get to be the victim, then I don't have to maybe step into something that's really hard or uncomfortable, taking a deep look at myself or responding to the situation in a way that maybe feels really hard.
Hmm. So here's the thing that I'm thinking of right now is people who have a lot of failed relationships. And it's like, oh, I choose wrong. Poor me. I'm always I'm always attracting the wrong kind of people. And sure, maybe that's true. Maybe that's true that the relationships aren't healthy. However, it's not about, oh, poor me, the life is always coming after me and it's never good for me. And somehow I just always end up with the wrong people. It's like, the relationships have failed. There's something happening within the relationships that's unhealthy. What does it say about me? Where's my growth here? How have I been participating? What within me is um is in active relationship with what's happening? If there was a wounding from my childhood, if there's a something repressed within me, that's an invitation to look at what's there, what's personal for me that I can then grow in and reflect in and take responsibility for, and therefore show up differently the best that I can.
Mhm. Yeah, this co-creation piece that I'm 100% responsible for my part, for my piece, for
Uh-huh.
how I have shown up to attract or enable or co-create this situation and or how I approach it, how I respond to it, how I perpetuate the problem.
And what I learn about myself in the process. And you sent me a reel, maybe it was last week, and it was like, oh, if you're with somebody who has, what was it? Like a lot of anger issues, it's showing that maybe there's a part of yourself that you haven't allowed to feel anger, like how the external reflects the shadow part of ourself or something that we haven't allowed ourselves to step into. And one of the comments under it was so beautiful because it's not just negative things, it's also positive things, right? Like maybe there's somebody that comes into your life that, maybe you didn't believe you were lovable and they have so much love, like there's so many different ways that this can reflect, but we are talking about victim versus responsibility. But basically using the external to inform us about the internal and not just being passive participants in life.
Right, that feels like a really great way to say that. Being an active and empowered participant in your life versus a passive participant, a passenger. Are you in the driver's seat or in the passenger seat of your life?
I've been thinking about this a lot recently in terms of creating my life and being a co-creator in the process. And I've done this a lot and I've done many different layers of it, but this new aspect is coming online of like, oh, I'm not just waiting for life. Like, I'm not just waiting for things to happen. Like, I must create what's going to happen. Like, I must live it and take steps and do it. Like, I'm not just waiting for all of life to come towards me. And it's something about that has really changed things for me.
It's a huge shift in mindset. Yeah, to kind of sit back and let your circumstances dictate what's gonna happen. You're
Mhm.
just along for the ride. Or are you gonna show up in your full power and do what you can and what feels aligned to really create what happens next?
Mhm. I feel like people can also make themselves feel really victim to not just like relationships and situations, but to God or to like the universe. Like, why would God do this to me? Or why would life do this to me? And so, in this, when I say co creative process, it's like this co creative process with life and the universe or God or however people experience that. It's like, oh, I'm an active participant. Life is happening, and some things do just seem like they happen to me, but I can also show up every day and create blessings. I can create also how I feel. Sometimes, I mean, of course, like I'm affected by the moon and my menstrual cycle and so many different things, but I there's a lot of places that I have ability to create my experience. I'm going to have a good day today or I'm going to see beauty. I'm going to um kind of like be ahead of the game and be like ahead of what's happening versus always being in response.
And there are times when someone on a healing journey is freaking tired of the responsibility, right? Of situation after situation where we feel like we're caught in the undertow and we can't quite get up for air and we're doing all the work and we're looking at ourselves and we're taking that accountability and taking the action and identifying the growth and there are those moments where it's like, God, I'm just not up for it. This sucks. This is shitty. You person, my partner, you know, I don't appreciate what's happening and it's all your fault and I'm exhausted and I can't look at the piece that's here for me right now.
Mm.
And sometimes we can sometimes it just becomes obvious. It connects and we go, "Oh, shit. Okay. Yes, am really good at seeing what your piece is." I'm thinking about in partnership. Most of us are really good at identifying what the other person's baggage is and how they are creating the situation. And sometimes that's just where we stay. And that feels so easy and clear. And if my partner, could just shift in this way or do this thing differently, we would not be in this situation. Everything would be better. And then we can shift out of that and shine the flashlight on ourselves, maybe even just for a moment. And it becomes or maybe we hear our partner's reflections and we go, oh, yeah. And here's my piece. And I can certainly relate to those moments where I go, oh, yeah, here's my piece, and feel that resistance to it in that moment. Like, damn it, I'm tired. I'm not up for my piece right now.
Yeah.
Right?
That's so real. And what that brought up as well was this sometimes responsibility is not what we think it's going to be. Back to this partnership idea. Like sometimes we see like our partner and we want them to change because we really want a certain outcome. But sometimes responsibility is acknowledging what is and then bringing that flashlight back to ourselves and be like, okay, if I can see what is, what responsibility do I have given this? I'm not going to change it. I'm not going to, um, hyper focus on what needs to change here for the other person. But given my acceptance and clear seeing, the responsibility to see what's happening. What responsibility in choice do I need to make given that? And sometimes that's really hard. Wow, that's not the outcome that you wanted. And the responsibility then is like, ooh, that feels, I don't want to have to do that thing, or I don't want to look at that part of myself, whatever it is. We can really use relationships to keep us from seeing the part of ourselves that's probably hardest to see, or do the thing that's hardest to do, or make the change within ourselves that's the hardest to make, or accept. Sometimes it's accepting what we don't want to accept. We don't want to accept that change that we want to see within somebody else isn't possible because it brings up a certain pain within ourself that we then need to look at and take responsibility for. And yes, sometimes we're just tired.
Yeah. Like I can look at my piece, but I'm not ready to do anything with that right now. Right now, it just feels really good to blame
Mhm, mhm,
something else or someone else. Yeah.
mhm. And I think that it's important to be able to acknowledge where there was a wrongdoing without it needing to be blamed too. Like you can still have responsibility within acknowledging a way that someone has harmed you, right? Kind of like both things can exist. It's not like you're a bad person, you know, it's all your fault. But like, yeah, your action has has been harmful. I'm going to look at my piece around it, but it's still true. Doesn't make it untrue.
Yeah. And taking that personal responsibility doesn't remove the personal responsibility for the other person,
No.
right? There's
No.
both.
Yeah, and it's noticing also for me, this has been a really important piece is knowing where I s- end and the other person starts. Because what can happen is in relationships is there can be somebody really good at self-reflecting and there can be somebody not so good at self-reflecting. And the person maybe really good will actually start taking on the responsibility for the other person as well and taking responsibility for everything, and that's unhealthy. So it's also knowing what's yours, what's not yours, and the practice of that, of learning yourself, learning your stuff. I mean, as therapists, we have to do this. We have to know what's ours and what's not ours. And so for those who maybe are really good at taking responsibility, it's knowing when to, yeah, where you end and somebody else starts.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well said.
Thanks for joining us for this conversation. Any final thoughts?
I think that's it. Yeah. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you next week.
Thank you all.